Hi everybody. Today I've had a couple of questions put into the group by Mandy, and I'm going to answer those in a minute, but I just initially wanted to talk to you about what I feel is the key to recovery. And when I talk about recovery, I've said this before, it kind of gives you that feeling when you think of recovery, because you have your own kind of like interpretations of what that means, and it doesn't feel good. So for me, I think about recovery in terms of feeling stronger and feeling better about yourself. And the key to that for me is to change your mindset. And it's kind of like mindset is a bit of a buzzword, really, isn't it? And it's all, so what actually does it mean to change your mindset? Well, basically, we have these negative beliefs about ourselves, particularly when we have like a mental health condition, sort of including eating disorders and anorexia. We have negative beliefs about ourselves. So we've interpreted events from our childhood, and we form these negative beliefs. And the thing is once we have these negative beliefs, we're stuck with them. We go through life and we just look for all the things that happen. And as I've always said, the most common one I find is the belief of I'm not good enough. But once we go through life, we look for all the things to support that and totally disregard anything else. We're just focused on the negative. So for me, the whole kind of thing around sort of like recovery or feeling stronger or feeling better about yourself is changing those negative beliefs. And I just wanted to tell you about a lady that I worked with, and I don't kind of like share everything, all sort of like successes and stuff, because I'd be talking about it all the time. But this was just it just made me think. There were, when she started working with me, there were sort of like 33 negative beliefs that we went through, and these just are typical negative beliefs. And she practically ticked everyone. In fact, she did tick every one of these, thinking that they were, that she had these beliefs about herself. And then I ask people to grade them in terms of sort of like between 0 to 10, whether 0 is whether they think that they are not true at all, and 10 being completely true. So 33 beliefs, and she kind of like graded them, and she was grading them pretty high. I think the lowest that she graded them was 5, and the majority were more like 8, 9 and 10. So she ended up with a score of 294, I think it was. And basically, she started working with me. She wasn't sure, sort of like she tried lots of other things in the past that, had kind of like maybe helped a little bit. She'd had loads of therapy, but she was still struggling. And so when she came to me, she wasn't sure whether this would work for her. She wasn't sure if it was right for her. She was still, kind of like scared of kind of, this whole process. She didn't know what she'd be like at the end. She had the whole typical kind of like worries, etc., that we all have. And at our last session recently, we went through these beliefs, because I always think that that's a good way of checking to see how well we've worked together and how well and the progress that she's made. And we went through, and her total score of these beliefs was 11. 11. And, I just think that's completely amazing. She picked out sort of like, about sort of 5 or 6 of these beliefs that she still had, but they were, the majority she just put 1. So she kind of like, she wasn't quite convinced, she wasn't quite willing to let them go yet. But you know, they were just at a 1, or there was a couple at a 2. And, you know, I just think that's a huge transformation. Now, I worked with her for 12 weeks, and she's in her 40s. She's been struggling with anorexia and bulimia for, you know, the majority of her life, since teenage years. And, you know, to make that transformation in 12 weeks, I think is incredible. And, you know, and it was all down to her willingness to let go, her willingness to, even though she was scared, she was willing to embrace this, you know, process. And she worked hard at it, you know, and it's not easy, but she did the work. So I just wanted to share that with you, because just to show that it is very, very possible. That's what I wanted to share with you. Now, as I said, Mandy put in the group about, let me write it down, she asked about holistic therapies that would help, you know, that are, you know, not NHS led or anything like that. Basically, you know, as I've always said, sort of like my transformation was I learned EFT, emotional freedom techniques, which I use now, which transformed my life. I also learned something called mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, which really helped me as well. But there are lots of different holistic therapies that you can try, and I know Mandy raised the issue of, she suggested a few, and hypnotherapy. Now, I've heard lots of good things about hypnotherapy, but I have had clients who've come to me trying hypnotherapy and it hasn't worked for them. So there is lots of different things, and I wrote a few of them down. There's like hypnotherapy, there's like chakra balancing, Reiki, and that could be normal Reiki or angelic Reiki, reflexology, yoga, meditation, coaching, colour therapy, sound therapy. There are lots of different alternative holistic therapies that you can use, you know, and the thing is that I've had sort of like a couple of reflexology sessions, not for an eating disorder. I've had a couple of Reiki sessions, but again, not for an eating disorder. So I don't feel that I can comment or recommend any of these. But you know what? What works for one person doesn't work for another. So what I would say is research these things. If you kind of like, and just try it. You know, if you think that, you know, have a phone conversation with the person, because a lot of the time it's the rapport that we develop with the person that we're working with is also a big factor in whether this will work for you. So have a conversation with the person, you know, sort of like say what you're going for, what you're looking for, you know, out of this. And just have that conversation and just see if you kind of like, if you get on with that person, that's a real good first step. Because if you know, if you like the sound of them, if you like what they're kind of like telling you, then go ahead, sort of book up a session and just try it, because you never know. And even if it sounds like really like way out there and not something that you would kind of, you know, typically try out, there's no harm to be, you know, to you for trying these things, and it could be the thing that changes your life. So yeah, and also, you know, like I said, not one thing, you know, helps, you know, some things help different people. I've heard, like I said, I've heard great things about hypnotherapy, but I've heard, you know, like my clients say, I've tried that and it didn't help. And it could be about the person that they're working with. It could be just timing, you know, that maybe they tried it at a time that, you know, they weren't necessarily willing to kind of, you know, they weren't willing to sort of like change. They just had too many barriers. you know, and maybe their expectations were high. Maybe they say, actually, I tried hypnotherapy, maybe give it one shot, and, you know, then decide that they weren't fully cured or recovered, and then decided that that wasn't right for them. So I think you have to also have, you know, have realistic expectations, you know, when you look at this. And like I said, I worked with this client for 12 weeks. Now, for some people that could sound like a really long time, but actually for something that, you know, she'd been struggling with sort of like, you know, for just under 30 years, actually it's not, you know, it's not that long a time at all. And I've seen lots of write-ups about kind of like, you know, eating disorders and recovery, and people are saying, you know, you need years at this. So for 12 weeks, that to me, that, you know, that's not a lot. And, you know, if I'd have been sort of, you know, talking in terms of 12 weeks when I sort of like was struggling with an eating disorder, then I would have been really happy with that. So again, but it's just about managing your expectations. So yeah, so those are a few things. Did I mention yoga as well? Yoga was another one, and I think Mandy, you already do yoga. So yes, these are things that kind of like can help. But what I always sort of say is that they're great for helping calm the mind. They're great at helping help you feel more relaxed and sort of like positive. But what I have found is that there's a temporarily feeling better. But actually, you know, like I said about the negative beliefs and the mindset before, what you need to find is something that will help you shift your mindset, that is going to permanently make you feel better. So yes, these things are great, but what I want you to realize is that you need sort of like that permanent change of mindset. So whatever you do day to day to help you get through, great. But remember that permanent sort of like shift in mindset as well. Okay, and and also getting to the root of your issues. And also Mandy said, I want to break free, basically to have more energy and to have more motivation, but I never want to give up that thigh gap and the bones when I look in the mirror. So what I would say to that, and I totally get it, absolutely get it, because it does feel, you know, there's that thing that, you know, you've been struggling with this for so long and it feels so crap and you want to kind of get out of it, but the thought of letting go also seems, you know, scary, terrifying in fact. So what I would say is to you, Mandy, is what does that, you know, when you look at those bones, when you look at that thigh gap, what does that give to you? You know, what does that mean to you? And what does it give to you? Sort of like, what is it about giving that up? What are those barriers that, you know, sort of like that voice in your head, all the blocks and stuff like that, you know, what is it that is kind of, what does that thigh gap and the bones, what does that represent for you? You know, does it mean that you are successful? Does it mean that you are good enough? Does it mean that you are, you know, achieving something, you know, and maybe that, you know, does it mean that you are special? Does it, you know, what is it that actually that gives to you? What does that kind of like define you as, you know? And so in retrospect, what does letting go of that mean? So does it mean that, I don't know, you've then failed? Does it mean that you're unattractive? Does it mean that you are going to be judged now on kind of like how you look? You know, what is it, you know, that sort of like that means to you? And So what I would then sort of like start doing is kind of like looking at where you are now and realizing that actually, okay, this gives me, you know, this sort of like thigh gap, or, you know, where you are right now in terms of your body, this is what it gives me. But then maybe look at all the negatives that it brings you as well, you know. So this is, okay, this is the positives, but this is the negatives that it brings you. And maybe write those down and just do like a reality check. And, you know, and sort of, you know, I always say about, you know, kind of presenting evidence to a judge, you know. So imagine you are kind of giving evidence to a judge that, you know, kind of like your current body gives you X, Y, Z. You know, like I said, it makes you feel like you're successful. It makes you feel like whatever it is for you, that you're good enough, etc. Now imagine presenting that to a judge. You know, is that based on facts, or is that just your own opinion, your view of how you see yourself, the world, etc.? So you could do that, and actually, you know, chances are, and, you know, if I was doing that now, I'd say that that was, you know, having been there, I would say that that was based on purely my own distorted view of myself and you know, sort of like my life, etc. And I realised that actually, you know, there were a lot more things in my life that I was successful at, that I was good enough at, and that gave me more, you know, sort of than that body that could ever give me. I just wasn't looking at it right. I was looking at it from a totally distorted, incorrect, inaccurate angle. And so it's when you kind of like, you know, are able to sort of like see it how it truly is, you're almost able to like then embrace and see the bigger picture. And I know bigger picture, that immediately kind of like sends up things, but you know, the true picture, you know, the sort of like you're able to see more clearly the realistic view of everything. And so, and also, if you were my client and I was looking to work with you, I would do tapping on all those barriers that you have. So the reasons that you don't want to let go. So the thought of letting go of your current body, you know, I would tap on all your resistance to that. But you know what? What I really have to say is that actually, I'm, you know, sort of, I know the fears behind kind of, you know, recovery, etc. But it doesn't mean to say that you're going to get fat. You know, just because you let go of an eating disorder, you let go of anorexia, yes, you will restore weight, because actually when you're more relaxed and, you know, sort of like calm, etc., and more confident about yourself, you will automatically, you'll have more of an appetite for life, but you'll have more of an appetite for food. But it doesn't mean that you then have to overeat, because the thing is, when you get rid of that fear, you get rid of the guilt and that around eating, because that's what it is. It's not the food on the plate that's the issue. It's all the emotions that you have around it and the voice that screams in your head. When you get rid of that, you know, you're able to eat in more of a balanced way, so you don't have the whole restricting, binging, purging sort of cycle. You know, you can just eat. And there are people out there who are slim and don't have, you know, anorexia. They just eat normally what's right for them, and that's what is a good goal to get to. So although you're talking about kind of like letting go of this current body that you have, it doesn't mean, you know, you're kind of like imagining this kind of, I did, imagine this huge kind of like body that I'd have to be in. But as you kind of like work on your mindset, like I said, and this is why it's important to work on the mindset rather than just kind of on the symptoms and just eating a little bit more, because that does feel uncomfortable, you know. But if you can work on your mindset and kind of like alter, like I said, the view of yourself and everything, then things become different. You're far more accepting of yourself and of your body, and you know, and then that change feels okay because you see it in more of a positive way rather than desperately trying to hold on to kind of like, you know, what you used to be like. So I hope that helps a bit. If it doesn't, Mandy, please come back to me and ask me more questions and stuff. If you're watching on the replay and you have any questions, any additional questions, then please pop them into the box and I will answer them later on. I hope you found that useful, and I wish you a very good day, and I will speak to you soon. All right, take care. Lots of love. Bye.